Ling Tian, the first-generation swordsman, brought the Heavenly Way Stele back 300 years ago. Her former beauty was still there, and her enemies from all walks of life were not dead. In this life, he will step on the pride of all sides, slay all enemies in the world, and wield the hand of beauty to turn this world upside down. Chapter 1. Returning to 300 years ago. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Donghuang Qianyu, Sword God Sect. A giant sword pierces through the sky, as if piercing straight into the clouds, touching the ancient peak. Temples stand tall in it, like immortal palaces in the sky. The entire Sword God Sect spans 100 miles. Outside the sect, there stands an ancient sword. This is the boundary of Sword God Sect. At this moment, two young men sweating profusely are slowly walking towards a cliff outside the boundary, carrying a blood-stained sack. Bang! When they arrived at the edge of the cliff, the two casually threw their burlap bags onto the ground and sat slumped on the ground. We guys are really unlucky. On the day of the Sword God Sect's Sword Son coronation ceremony, we were arranged to do such a hard job. Zhao Hu, one of the two, wiped the sweat off his forehead and started complaining profusely. Don't leave any ink on it. Hurry up and throw Ling Tian, this useless person, off the cliff. Maybe we can go to Xingzhong Square later and admire Senior Qin Chuan's style. After resting for a moment, Zhang Long stood up and looked at the blood-stained sack with a fierce gleam in his eyes. Ah! At this moment, a roar came from inside the blood-stained sack. Scared, the two instinctively took a few steps back. Ling Tian, whose face was covered in blood stains, crawled out of the sack. What's going on? Isn't I dead? Where is this? Ling Tian looked at him in shock and muttered to himself in a slightly imperceptible voice. Zhang Long and Zhao Hu saw Ling Tian waking up and looked at each other with an incredible expression on their faces. This guy, after being so seriously injured, is he still alive? But soon, their emotions calmed down. Zhang Long's face showed a hint of ferocity as he walked forward with a fierce smile. Ling Tian, don't worry for now. Although you haven't died yet, our brothers will send you on the road soon. Below the Black Wind Cliff, the monsters in the Wangjian mountain range are still waiting to taste your delicate skin and tender flesh. Black Wind Cliff, looking at the Sword Mountain range, is this the Sword God Sect? Upon hearing Zhang Long's words, Ling Tian's body trembled. As his bewildered gaze swept around, a happy expression gradually appeared on his face. Then he burst out laughing loudly. At the end of the laughter, tears even faintly appeared. Ling Tian is the youngest saint of the ancient continent. In order to reverse the cycle of reincarnation and resurrect his former close relatives and friends, he entered the first wonderland of the ancient continent alone to search for the legendary Heavenly Dao Stele with the power of reincarnation. But he never expected it, just as he found the Heavenly Way Stele and had just taken a step out of the wonderland. The Heavenly Supreme, who had once shared life and death with him and shared brotherhood, unexpectedly notified the 5 saints in advance and joined forces to encircle and suppress him outside the wonderland. Finally, outnumbered. He had no choice but to risk everything and forcefully merge the Heavenly Dao Stele into his divine soul. Unexpectedly, due to misfortune and blessings, it truly reversed the cycle and returned to 300 years ago. 300 years ago. The Heavenly Way Stele truly possesses the power of reincarnation, taking me back 300 years ago. In this life, I will erase all regrets. Tianxiong and Wusheng, you all wait for me. I will soon settle this blood debt with you. Ling Tian sighed in his heart, but his gaze became colder and his words became colder. At the moment when the Lingtian Dao Stele was placed on the divine soul, he discovered it. The Heavenly Way Stele not only possesses the power of reincarnation, but also possesses the power of evolving the Heavenly Way. This gives him an advantage over ordinary people in practicing martial arts. Perhaps he could cultivate all the powerful techniques and martial arts that he had not been able to cultivate in his previous life. For example, the Chaos Scripture of Sword God Sect. What's this guy going crazy about? Did that just hit him and broke his brain? Zhao Hu couldn't help but strangely look at Zhang Long on the side when he saw Ling Tian laughing wildly, tears in excitement, and a ferocious expression on his face. I don't think so. Zhang Long shook his head and said, he was previously deposed by Elder Qin He and had his sword bone dug up by Senior Qin Chuan. It's normal for him to go crazy after suffering such a blow. Qin Chuan. Qin He. Upon hearing these two long-lost names, Ling Tian's eyes flashed with a sense of fierce killing. Although it has been over 300 years, he still remembers the past events vividly. He was originally the adopted son of the Ling family in Beifeng Town, Yenyun Kingdom. 2 years ago, due to being pregnant with sword bones, he had exceptional talent and became an outsider disciple of the Sword God Sect. Afterwards, he was adopted as a personal disciple by Qin River Elder, the father of Qin River and the Sword God Sect. Under the cultivation of Qin River, his cultivation skyrocketed, even surpassing Qin Chuan, who has always been known as a genius in the Sword God Sect. However, just 3 days ago at night, Qin He and his son suddenly burst into his room. Qin River shattered his elixir field and ruined his cultivation. Qin Chuan dug up his sword bones, and in front of him, refine it and integrate it into oneself. And he, Dan Tian, is shattered. The sword bone has been dug out. Seriously injured. Only one breath left. Even so, Qin He and his son still refused to let him go. Today, Zhang Long and Zhao Hu were ordered to take him to the Black Wind Cliff and throw him to feed on the monsters in the Wangjian mountain range. Let him disappear from this world forever. The sky never stopped him, and he was thrown off the Black Wind Cliff and fell into the Wangjian mountain range. He did not die. But he was saved by a mysterious elder of the Sword God Sect and secretly raised in the Watching Sword mountain range. But due to the broken Dan Tian, he could only cultivate the chaos manual that ordinary people find difficult to cultivate. As for Qin Chuan, because he refined his sword bones, he was awarded the title of Sword of the Sword God Sect today and received great training from the Sword God Sect. Even later on, he became one of the top 10 saints in the Eastern Wilderness. Ling Tian, after practicing hard for over 100 years, only then did he strike Qin Chuan and avenge this bloody sea. Qin Chuan. Qin He. In this life, your father and son will shatter my elixir field, depose my cultivation, and dig up my sword bone revenge. I will not wait for another 100 years. Ling Tian suddenly roared out loud. Zhang Long and Zhao Hu were once again startled. It seems that this guy is really crazy. He's the only useless person now, and he still wants to seek revenge from Qin Chuan senior brother and Qin He elder. Turning to his senses, Zhao Hu gave a cruel smile. But the next breath, the expression on his face instantly froze again. At this moment, Ling Tian actually got up from the ground. What's going on? He used to only have one breath left, but now why did he suddenly get up? Zhang Long suddenly felt a bit flustered. At this moment, the Heavenly Way Stele inside Ling Tian's body released a wonderful force. In an instant, his heavily scarred body was quickly and effectively repaired. Qin Chuan should still be at Xingzhong Square now, right? As his injuries healed, Ling Tian's cold eyes slowly swept towards Zhang Long and Zhao Hu. For some reason, Zhang Long and Zhao Hu felt Ling Tian's gaze and a strong sense of timidity unconsciously emerged in their hearts. His cultivation has long been abandoned by Elder Qin He, and now he's just a useless person. There's nothing to be afraid of. Zhao Hu, let's work together to push him off the Black Wind Cliff and hurry back to hand over the task. Zhang Long's voice trembled slightly, and his expression panicked as he spoke to Zhao Hu, putting on a posture of preparing to take action. Chapter 2. Swordsmanship Ceremony. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Okay. Zhao Hu mustered up his courage and agreed. After speaking, the two figures rushed towards Ling Tian at the same time. What cultivation is needed to deal with you two? Ling Tian sneered contemptuously. Immediately, he stepped out and his left and right hands instantly formed claws, while also gripping the throats of Zhang Long and Zhao Hu. As a disciple of the Sword God Sect, I am willing to be Qin He's father and son's lackey, and I would not hesitate to die. Ling Tian's words were cold and crisp, his palms exerting force. With a click, they easily cut their throats. At the beginning of martial arts, it sensed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, refined skin, bones, and marrow, collectively known as the refined body realm. Afterwards, absorbed the spiritual energy from heaven and earth into the body, warm and nourished the meridians, forged the elixir field, transform the spiritual energy into spiritual power, and create a spiritual realm. When spiritual power converges into a wheel, it becomes the spiritual will realm. Furthermore, there is the realm of Linghai, Jinyuan, and Tianren. And a more powerful realm of Dao and Sheng. Even though Ling Tian was shattered by the elixir field, he could no longer mobilize his spiritual power, but he still had the strength to refine the 9th level of the body realm. Although Zhang Long and Zhao Hu are first-order martial artists in the Lingdong realm, they are not opponents of Ling Tian in terms of combat power. When Ling Tian released his grip on the palms of the two, their bodies immediately collapsed on the ground. At this moment, the sound of a curling bell came from afar. Ling Tian's sharp gaze followed in the direction of the sound of the bell. That is where the square of the sacred bell of the Sword God Sect is located. The ceremony of Qin Chuan's Sword Sun coronation must have already begun. Ling Tian didn't have time to change into a clean clothes, his feet trembled, and he quickly rushed towards the holy bell square. At this moment, the area around the sacred bell square of the Sword God Sect is filled with figures. On the high platform ahead, the leader of the Sword God Sect and a group of elders sat upright. Their gaze was fixed on the young man standing alone by the ancient clock in the center of the square. Undoubtedly, the youth is the protagonist of today's Jianzi coronation ceremony, known as Qin Chuan, the first pride of the Sword God Sect. As for this ancient bell, it is the sacred artifact of the Sword God Sect, the Chaos Bell. Another bell ringing. The 8th ring. Unexpectedly, after many years, our Sword God Sect has another unparalleled heavenly pride who can make the Chaos Bell ring 8 times. If I remember correctly, the last time the chaotic clock rang 8 should have been over 70 years ago, right? Qin Chuan's chaotic bell rings 8 times, and he is honored with the position of the Sword Master of our Sword God Sect, truly deserving of his reputation. On the high platform in front of the square, a group of elders sighed and praised Qin Chuan endlessly. Qin He sat among the elders, his face full of pride. In the center of the square, next to the chaos clock. That glorious young man, but his precious son. He has been preparing for 2 years to make his son become the Sword God Sect Sword Child. Spending a lot of resources, borrowing Ling Tian's body to warm and nourish sword bones. Finally, 3 days ago, Ling Tian's sword bone was transplanted onto Qin Chuan's body. This is why Qin Chuan successfully triggered the chaotic bell to ring 8 times. Master, I think it's almost time. After Qin Chuan withdrew his palm that lightly touched the chaos bell, Qin He smiled and looked at the Sword God Sect leader Jian Xian sitting beside him. Jian Xian nodded slightly and slowly stood up. The originally noisy crowd around St. Bell Square suddenly quieted down. A group of disciples of the Sword God Sect looked at the high platform in front of the square, all showing respect. Qin Chuan, with the capital of the Heavenly Zone, has attracted the 8 rings of the Chaos Bell. His ancestors throughout history have been honored, and now Qin Chuan is honored as the 52nd generation Sword Son of our Sword God Sect. I am honored with the Sword God Order. The sound of Jian Chuan's words is loud and resounding both inside and outside the Xingzhong Square. The disciples of the Sword God Sect are filled with excitement, taking pride in witnessing the birth of a new generation of swords in the Sword God Sect. Qin Chuan held his head and chest high, with a solitary and proud expression on his face. Enjoying the wonderful feeling of countless glories bestowed upon oneself. Wait a minute. Jian Xian had just taken out the Sword God Order, and suddenly a voice came from the quiet Xingzhong Square. Jian Xian frowned slightly and looked sideways towards the direction of the words. Who is so bold as to dare to cause trouble at the Swordsman Enclave ceremony? Qin He's face lit up with anger and he immediately gave a cold rebuke. This moment is the most important moment in the life of his son Qin Chuan. He doesn't allow any accidents to happen. The people on the St. Bell Square were all looking sideways. But a figure covered in blood slowly squeezed through the crowd and appeared in everyone's sight. That person is Ling Tian. I heard that a few days ago when Ling Tian was practicing, he was not possessed by a demon and his elixir field shattered. He was almost out of breath. How can I see him doing well? No, I can't feel any spiritual fluctuations on him, his dantian seems to have really shattered. How dare a useless person with a broken elixir field who cannot continue to cultivate to cause trouble at the Sword Prince's coronation ceremony? Recognizing this figure covered in blood, the entire St. Bell Square immediately became agitated, with voices of discussion echoing one after another. In the outer sect of the Sword God Sect, Ling Tian's reputation is no less than that of Qin Chuan. Even louder than Qin Chuan. At the age of 16, Ling Tian joined the Sword God Sect. At 17, he set foot in the spirit realm, and by the age of 18, he had already achieved 9 levels of cultivation in the spirit realm. On the improvement of cultivation speed. The entire Sword God Sect is unmatched by anyone. He was originally the most powerful contender for the sword position. Naiha received bad news 3 days ago. Ling Tian cultivates and becomes demonic, causing the elixir field to shatter on its own. Naturally, he was also removed from the list of candidates for the sword. Zhang Long and Zhao Hu, these two useless people, how do they handle things? They can't even dispose of a waste that shattered the dantian. Seeing it was Ling Tian, Qin Chuan's face temporarily darkened. Jian Xian and the elders of the Sword God Sect all showed curious expressions. Although Ling Tian is from another sect, he has a great reputation. Even if they hold high positions, they have heard a little about it. So they are very curious. Why did Ling Tian come here today? Is it not convincing? What is there to be unconvinced about a person with broken dantian? At this moment, under the gaze of everyone, Ling Tian had come to Qin Chuan. After glancing at Qin Chuan, his cold gaze turned to Jian Xian and a group of elders from the Sword God Sect on the high platform ahead. According to the ancestral teachings of the Sword God Sect, only those who sound the chaos bell 9 times are eligible to become Sword God Sect swordsmen. Qin Chuan, who has only triggered the 8 rings of the chaos bell, is not worthy of becoming a sword of the Sword God Sect. Ling Tian's words were resounding and powerful, but the elders shook their heads secretly upon hearing them. The Sword God Sect did indeed have ancestral teachings. If you want to become a sword of the Sword God Sect, you need to sound the chaos bell 9 times. However, in the past 300 years, there has never been a person in the Sword God Sect who triggers the 9 rings of the chaos bell. Therefore, this condition has been correspondingly relaxed. The sound of the chaotic bell gradually became a passing scene in the ceremony of the Sword Son's coronation. Ling Tian, the Sword God Sect Sword Son, has been conferred the title. The sect leader and elder have a clear idea that it's not your turn as a useless person to point fingers and make mistakes. Seeing Ling Tian appear to cause trouble, Qin Chuan immediately scolded him. A useless person. If you hadn't dug out my sword bones and fused them into yourself, wouldn't I have become a useless person? Ling Tian looked at Qin Chuan with a cold expression in his eyes. No, you're wrong. Upon hearing Ling Tian's words, Qin Chuan suddenly smiled interestingly and said, the sword bone was originally in my Qin Chuan's bag. It's just that my father and I raised it on you before, but now it's time for me to retrieve it. Otherwise, why do you think my father would spend so many resources nurturing you? Even if you refine your sword bones, you still only sound the chaos bell 8 times, indicating that your talent is truly mediocre. If the sword god sect chooses you as a sword, it will only make you laugh and be generous. Ling Tian had already known what Qin Chuan said. Therefore, he did not show too much anger. Just the voice getting colder and colder. At this moment, Qin Chuan burst out laughing wildly and said, "Who would sacrifice me for the position of sword god sect sword? Is there anyone in this sect who can trigger the 9 rings of the chaos bell?" Of course there is. Ling Tian's gaze narrowed slightly. After speaking, he turned around and walked towards the chaos clock. Chapter 3. Kuang Gu Shua Jin. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. On the high platform in front of the square, Qin he saw Ling Tian's intention and his eyes suddenly froze. On the day of the grand ceremony of the Sword God clan and the Sword Sun, how dare you act recklessly? Someone, immediately blast Ling Tian out of the Holy Bell Square. As the sound of Qin River fell, several Sword God sect deacons immediately walked out from both sides of Xingzhong Square. However, Ling Tian was the first to reach the chaos clock. At the moment when he reached out and touched the wall of the chaos clock, a golden text immediately appeared in his sea of consciousness. At the same time, the Heavenly Way Stele slowly emerged from its sea of consciousness and released a force of evolution in the Heavenly Way. Under the influence of the power of the evolution of the Heavenly Tao, the golden text constantly evolves into the Chaos Avenue, becoming increasingly clear. Quick! Stop him! Upon seeing this, Qin he felt a strong sense of unease and urgently shouted to the several deacons. Several deacons heard the order and stepped forward again, only to see the chaos clock flickering with a dazzling golden light, enveloping Ling Tian's body, making people afraid to approach. When the melodious bell rang out loud. With 6 consecutive sounds, the lingering sound lingers in my ears. What's going on? Isn't it that Lingtian Dantian is broken and already a useless person? Why can he still sound the chaos bell 6 times? To trigger the chaos bell, simply comprehend the chaos trigger recorded on the chaos bell. Although the Lingtian Dantian is broken, one's perception will not change as a result. In this way, he can trigger the 6 rings of the chaos bell, and his intelligence has surpassed the vast majority of Sword God sect disciples. Unfortunately, there is still a considerable gap between him and Qin Chuan senior brother. There was a commotion around the St. Bell Square, and various voices of discussion began to rise. Qin Chuan, who was also standing on the Xingzhong Square, had a contemptuous expression on his face. Ling Tian, you just made a big fuss, but now you only sound the chaos bell 6 times. I want to see how you end up later. He is now waiting to see Ling Tian's joke. However, as his words fell, the 7th bell rang out. On the high platform in front of the square, Jian Xian and the elders of the Sword God sect's gaze also narrowed slightly. Among the recent generations of sword masters in the Sword God sect, there are those who trigger the 7 rings of the chaos bell. If we look at the history of the Sword God sect, these people may not be much. At that time, they were all the first contemporary members of the Sword God sect. It is the pride of suppressing an era. Ling Tian's 7 rings of the chaos bell prove that his intelligence is no weaker than these people. When the 8th bell rang out loud, Qin Chuan's mouth twitched faintly, and his face darkened accordingly. The sound of 8 bells is already on par with it. He vaguely felt that his sword position was threatened. The crowd didn't have time to be surprised, and the 9th chime followed closely. The golden light that enveloped Ling Tian did not dim at all. On the contrary, it becomes even more dazzling and eye-catching. At this moment, the St. Bell Square was also boiling as never before. 9 rings. Ling Tian actually triggered the chaos clock 9 rings. The Sword God sect has not had anyone trigger the chaos bell to ring 9 times for hundreds of years. I didn't expect Ling Tian to do it today. It's unbelievable. Today, the ceremony of the Sword Prince's coronation is becoming more and more interesting. All the disciples of the Sword God sect were shocked and horrified. At this moment, they even had some doubts about their ears. On the high platform in front of the square, the elders of the Sword God sect cannot continue to remain calm. A few people even left their seats excitedly. Master, our Sword God sect has ancestral teachings that only those who use the 9 rings of the Chaos Bell can become Sword God sect swords. Previously, no one could use the 9 rings of the Chaos Bell, but it's not a big deal to seek the second title of Qin Chuan, who uses the 8 rings of the Chaos Bell, as a sword. But now, one of the green-robed elders had a solemn expression, and after hesitating for a while, suddenly turned around to face the sect leader, Sword Xian Dao. Jian Xian had not yet responded, and Qin He's face suddenly darkened, shouting loudly. What does Elder Lu mean by this? Is it difficult for you to ask the sect leader to appoint a useless person as a sword? Ling Tian's elixir field has been shattered and it is impossible to continue practicing. If you appoint him as a sword of the Sword God sect, wouldn't it be a joke? Qin He's words immediately complicated the expressions of the elders. Although Ling Tian rings the Chaos Bell 9 times, he is ultimately the one who has broken the Dantian and cannot practice. It seems inappropriate to change Ling Tian to Jian Zi at this time. When? At this moment, another bell rang out. The crowd around the square was stunned and suddenly felt that their cognition seemed to be completely overturned at this moment. 10 rings. The chaotic clock actually emitted its 10th ring. Isn't it true that the chaos clock only has a maximum of 9 rings? How could the sound of the 10th ring be heard? Impossible, this is impossible. Hearing hallucinations, it must be hearing hallucinations. Did all of us experience auditory hallucinations? Throughout the 1000-year history of the Sword God sect, only a few people have heard the 9 rings of the Chaos Bell. Everyone thought that 9 sounds were the limit. But now, Ling Tian actually caused the hybrid clock to emit the 10th ringing sound. The leader of the Sword God sect, Jian Xian, could no longer sit still. At this moment, he suddenly stood up from his seat, his eyes shining with brilliance, staring intently at Ling Tian standing next to the Chaos Bell, shrouded in golden light. When the 11th sound of the Chaos Bell rings, the crowd has been stunned and numb, and their emotions can no longer be described in words. When then, the 12th bell rang. At the same time, the dazzling golden light that enveloped Ling Tian gradually dissipated. His figure immediately appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, Ling Tian has retracted his protruding palm and stood quietly by the chaos clock. 12 sounds. Ling Tian unexpectedly triggered the 12 rings of the Chaos Bell, which can be said to be unprecedented. The entire St. Bell Square and its surroundings were immersed in a eerie and silent atmosphere, with needles falling in the air. Qin Chuan clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and felt an indescribable anger in his heart. Today is the day when he was enfeoffed with a sword. He should have been adorned with countless glories. But Ling Tian, the hybrid bell rings 12 times. Kuang Gu Shua Jin. At the same time, it also destroyed everything today. On the high platform ahead, Qin He's mood is also extremely complex. If he hadn't abandoned Ling Tian Dantian, so now, he will still be Ling Tian's master. The Ling Tian Chaos Bell rings 12 times. If one can practice, it will surely suppress an era and shake the mainland. In this way, Qin He, as the Ling Tian master, will also be recorded in the history of the Sword God sect. Unfortunately, the matter has come to an end and is irreparable. He can't tolerate Ling Tian anymore. Chuaner. Qin River's gaze was icy cold, and a divine thought was released, echoing through the sea of Qin River. Qin Chuan suddenly woke up at the sound. When he turned his head and noticed his father's gaze, he immediately understood what the other person meant. Ling Tian's dantian was shattered, but it triggered the 12 rings of the chaos bell, posing a threat to his sword position. Taking advantage of the current wavering attitude of the sect leader is undoubtedly an excellent opportunity to execute Ling Tian. If we don't kill now, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be any more unexpected changes in the future. Moreover, he is also the one who rings the chaos bell 8 times. Without considering Ling Tian, he is still the best candidate for the position of Sword God Sect Sword Son. So even if he kills Ling Tian, the sect will never punish him for it. Ling Tian. The grand ceremony of swordsman's appointment, holy and solemn. Your high-profile appearance, touching the chaos clock without permission, is a rebellious act. Today, I will publicly execute you and prove my swordsman's position. As the words fell, Qin Chuan's aura erupted. At the same time, a spirit will behind it, like a scorching sun, converged in an instant, releasing a blazing light. Chapter 4. Leveraging the power of Chaos Clock. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ling Luan. I didn't expect Senior Qin Chuan to have already stepped into the realm of Ling Luan. Seeing the spirit wheeled behind Qin Chuan, the silent crowd around the square immediately burst into a scream of surprise. 3 days ago, the Lingtian dantian remained unbroken and only possessed a 9th-level cultivation in the spiritual realm. Now the dantian is shattered, and the cultivation has dropped to the 9th level of the refining realm. But Qin Chuan, due to refining the sword bones that originally belonged to Ling Tian, has broken through to the realm of Ling Luan in one fell swoop. The difference between the two at this moment is like a cloud of mud. Now, Qin Chuan wants to kill Ling Tian and prove his sword position. Kill me. Worms are ultimately worms, even if they refine sword bones and condense spirit wheels, they still cannot transform real dragons. Ling Tian's face remained calm and composed, with an indifferent expression and a cold voice. After speaking, his palms slowly lifted up. The spiritual power in the void of Xingzhong Square gradually became violent, constantly converging towards its head. This scene inexplicably shocked the crowd in the square. Jian Xian and a group of elders of the Sword God sect also cast surprised glances at Ling Tian. What's going on? Ling Tian's elixir field is clearly broken, how could he still mobilize such terrifying spiritual power? No. Even if his elixir field is not broken, and he still has the 9th-level cultivation in the spiritual realm, it is impossible to gather such terrifying spiritual power between raising his hand. Is it possible that he is using some divine power? Even those who cultivate martial arts in the physical realm can use these powers. The people in the square were discussing one after another, all with doubts on their faces. They can't understand Ling Tian at this moment. Can it be said that the broken Ling Tian in dantian can still resist Qin Chuan, who has already stepped into the spiritual will realm? Bravado! The person with broken dantian cannot even mobilize spiritual power. How could they use any divine powers? Besides, you can't have any divine powers at all. Qin Chuan's eyes were fixed. After a brief surprise, his expression quickly returned to calm. Ling Tian was a disciple of his father Qin He before. He and his father are also the two people in the Sword God sect who know Ling Tian the best. So he was convinced that Ling Tian had no supernatural powers at all. As for Ling Tian's dantian, that was broken by his father Qin He himself, let alone a fake one. Today, I'll let you know who the real worm is. After another cold drink, Qin Chuan suddenly stepped forward with a fist carrying terrifying power, unleashing a terrifying spiritual storm in the void. Facing the punch from Qin Chuan, Ling Tian stood proudly without moving a single step. Condense. Ling Tian let out a low cry, and a golden light flashed through his eyes. The void above his head, the constantly converging spiritual power gradually transformed into an ancient bell surrounded by golden light, enveloping him. At the same time, Qin Chuan's punch had already arrived. With a loud local noise, everyone saw Qin Chuan's unstoppable punch instantly disintegrate, and his body was forcefully blasted away by a powerful recoil force. How could it be possible? Qin Chuan's figure tossed and turned in the air several times, and after landing, he retreated more than 10 steps in a row. When he looked at Ling Tian again, an incredulous expression appeared on his face. His punch just now gathered all his strength. How could Ling Tian's defense not even be broken, but instead be shaken away? The shock in the hearts of the crowd was no less than that in Qin Chuan. Their gaze was fixed on Ling Tian in disbelief. Suddenly, it was discovered that the golden bell enveloping Ling Tian resembled the chaotic clock on the side. However, this golden bell is condensed from spiritual power and does not actually exist. From a morphological perspective, it is also much smaller than a true chaotic clock. It seems that he has borrowed the power of the chaos clock. On the high platform in front of the square, Jian Xian's gaze was slightly fixed, with a thoughtful expression. Chaos clock. On one side, Qin River's expression slightly changed, and his eyes turned cold. The expressions on the faces of the other elders of the Sword God Sect also became exciting. Jian Xian then slowly explained, Ling Tian's 12 rings of the Chaos Bell indicate that he has fully understood the Chaos Bell. Therefore, in this Holy Bell Square, as long as he operates the Chaos Bell, he can borrow the power of the Chaos Bell. Legend has it that the Chaos Clock is a sacred artifact. Ling Tian, who only cultivates his physical state, naturally cannot control the Chaos Clock. He is only using the power of the Chaos Clock to operate the Chaos Generator now. So you have comprehended the Chaos and borrowed the power of the Chaos Clock. Although Qin Chuan was in Xingzhong Square, he also heard Jian Xian's words. As a result, his complexion turned black like the bottom of a pot for a moment. Just now, he was imposing and wanted to execute Ling Tian to prove his sword position. He threatened to let Ling Tian know who the real worm was. If we retreat now, wouldn't it be indicating that he is the real worm? How strong can borrowing the power of external objects be? If you can withstand my fist, I don't believe you can withstand my sword. Qin Chuan gritted his teeth and let out a loud roar, his killing intent intensifying in his eyes. As he spoke, a long sword quietly appeared in his hand. Then, a powerful sword energy burst out. Sharp and sharp. This is sword energy. Senior Qin Chuan has been controlling sword energy since he was young, and he is truly a genius in sword cultivation. Sword energy is something that sword cultivators dream of. Even if it's the disciples of our Sword God Sect, not everyone has already mastered sword energy. This time, Ling Tian will die. Qin Chuan held a sword in his hand, and the sword energy burst forth, once again attracting a burst of exclamation from the crowd. The crowd around the square is almost foreseeable. Under the sword of Qin Chuan, Ling Tian will surely die. However, at this moment, Ling Tian's mouth slightly raised, holding up a cold smile. In his eyes, there was only a strong contempt for Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan refined the sword bones that belonged to him, and only then did he master the first level of sword energy. Such a talent in swordsmanship cannot be considered strong at all. Self-inflicted humiliation. Ling Tian spoke coldly. When Qin Chuan stabbed with a sword, chaos was activated again. For a moment, the golden bell that enveloped him shone brightly. The whole golden bell flew forward, releasing terrifying energy and suppressing it towards Qin Chuan. Slash. The spirit will behind Qin Chuan spun rapidly. The terrifying spiritual power converged with a sword, and it slashed down in the air. Buzz. A loud roar resounded out. A nearly destructive power directly destroyed Qin Chuan's swordsmanship. Qin Chuan's body was violently shaken by a terrifying force. Afterwards, he fell to the ground like a broken kite, unable to get up again. On the other hand, Ling Tian remained unscathed, surrounded by golden light, like a heavenly deity descending to earth. At this moment, he had already taken steps and slowly walked towards Qin Chuan lying on the ground. Stepping on his back with one foot, he looked down contemptuously. I think you have already shown me who the real worm is. On the high platform in front of the square, Qin He's face had already turned pitch black. He never expected that things would develop into this situation. Ling Tian stepped on the Qin River, shamelessly humiliating. How did Qin Chuan receive the title of Sword God Sect Sword? Is it possible for the Sword God Sect to have a person stepped on by a martial artist in the refined realm, representing the highest glory of the Sword God Sect Sword? Chapter 5. Chaos Scripture. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The people around the square were shocked beyond measure. They clearly did not anticipate either. Stepping into the realm of the spirit wheel, Qin Chuan, who controlled the powerful sword energy, surprisingly suffered such a miserable defeat. Unexpectedly, he couldn't even take Ling Tian's move. Of course, they are also aware. This is not to say how strong Ling Tian's combat power is. The power of the chaotic clock is just too terrifying. However, isn't Ling Tian strong enough to borrow the power of the chaos clock? Damn it! At this time, Qin Chuan was trampled by Ling Tian, bearing the overwhelming force of Mount Tai. His face was ferocious, and he growled with anger. Ling Tian, you just borrowed the power of Chaos Bell. What can you be arrogant about? If you are outside the Holy Bell Square, I will kill you, like slaughtering pigs and dogs. Is that right? Ling Tian sneered and said, if it weren't for my broken elixir field and declining cultivation, would you still be so arrogant? 3 days ago, when our cultivation was at the 9th level of the spiritual realm, why didn't we see you say such things? Qin Chuan's anger was about to erupt, but due to Ling Tian's words, it was all stuck in his throat. 3 days ago, Ling Tian's elixir field was not broken, and his cultivation level was the 9th level of the spiritual realm, just like him. But there is a considerable gap in their combat power. He is no match for Ling Tian at all. The reason why he has such confidence now is simply because the Lingtian Dantian has been shattered and his cultivation has regressed. The scene at St. Bell Square was once awkward. Ling Tian stepped on Qin River and didn't let go, nor did he say much. But no one on the field dares to come forward and take advantage of Ling Tian. They just witnessed Ling Tian's strength. As long as it is in the Holy Bell Square, Ling Tian can use the power of the Chaos Bell. No one would be his opponent at all. Master. Ling Tian is so bold and reckless that he humiliated the sword of our Sword God Sect. It can be seen that he has no sect in his eyes and should be executed on the spot. Qin He's eyes flickered with murderous intent, and at this moment he turned around and suggested to Jian Xian in a cold voice. Qin River. Your son Qin River is not yet the sword of my Sword God Sect. As soon as the Qinhe dialect was spoken, Ling Tian, who was stepping on the Qinchuan River, coldly responded to him on the Xingzhong Square. Just now, the sect leader clearly conferred the title of Sword Son on my son Qin Chuan. Why is he not the Sword God Sect Sword Son? As soon as Ling Tian shouted, Qin He glared angrily at the other person, his chest boiling with anger. Since ancient times, those who hold the Sword God Order have been the swordsmen of the Sword God Sect. Nowadays, the Sword God Order is still in the hands of the sect leader, so Qin Chuan is naturally not the swordsman of the Sword God Sect. Ling Tian sneered and said. You. Qin He felt angry in his heart, but couldn't say anything to refute. Then, he looked anxiously at Jian Xian and said, Master. All right. Jian Xian had a calm expression on his face and only spoke when he saw Qin He arguing with Ling Tian. After a light sigh, the other party asked Qin He indifferently, Elder Qin do you think Qin Chuan is still suitable to be my sword god sect sword in the current situation? How sacred is the grand ceremony of the sword god sect's enfeoffment of swords? If just now, Qin Chuan really killed Ling Tian to prove himself, you can still continue to be granted the position of sword son. But now, he is being stepped on by Ling Tian. What other face is there to continue being granted the title of sword god sect sword son? Even if it is to be sealed, it can only be rescheduled. Is it true that the sect leader intends to enfeoff Ling Tian as a sword? Qin River's face darkened. Yes. Ling Tian did indeed defeat Qin Chuan in public, but that was just borrowing the power of the Chaos Bell. If he leaves Xingzhong Square, he will ultimately be just a useless person, with a broken elixir field and a lifelong cultivation difficulty. How can he accept the position of sword god sect's sword son? Besides, his recent move is truly a lack of sect and should be killed. Qin River is not unable to see the current situation clearly. Compared to appointing Qin Chuan as a sword, he now hopes more for Ling Tian's death. As long as Ling Tian dies, the position of sword son will still be in Qin Chuan. After a long wait, everyone forgot about what happened today. So the position of Qin Chuan's sword son will still not be greatly affected. I didn't say I wanted to seal Ling Tian as a sword. Jian Xian said calmly, however, Elder Qin's words just now are also somewhat incorrect. The broken dantian does not mean that one cannot practice. Does not our sword god sect have a set of martial arts specifically for those who break dantian to cultivate? What does the master mean, the chaos scripture? Upon hearing the sound, Qin He's eyes suddenly flickered with a strange light, and he looked at Jian Xian in surprise. In the sword god sect, the only set of martial arts that can also be practiced by people with broken dantian is the chaos manual. More precisely, the chaos manual can only be practiced by those who have broken the dantian. That's right. Jian Xian nodded slightly and then said slowly, the chaos recorded on the chaos bell is just the introductory chapter of the chaos manual. This son can sound the chaos bell 12 times and use the power of the chaos bell to prove that he has understood the chaos His understanding is amazing, and he is an excellent candidate for practicing the chaos manual. If he can cultivate the chaos scripture to a perfect state, he can forge a powerful chaos body. At that time, not only will he receive the position of the sword god sect sword son, but even the position of my sect leader, he can also bear it. The words of Jian Xian may seem exaggerated, but they are also facts. By practicing the chaos scripture to a perfect state, one can forge a powerful chaos divine body. And the chaotic divine body carries countless paths. It is one of the most powerful divine bodies in the ancient continent. Anyone who can forge a chaotic divine body will become a martial arts powerhouse that dominates the world. The position of only the head of the sword god sect is certainly worthy. Not to mention the sword of the sword god sect. Master. Throughout history, besides the founder of our sword god sect, the chaos sword saint, has anyone ever cultivated the chaos scripture? Moreover, if Ling Tian were to cultivate the chaos scripture, who would teach him? Qin He had a deep gaze and did not take Jian Xian's words too seriously. Chaos scripture, isn't it so easy to cultivate? I think of one person to teach him. As for whether he can cultivate, it's really hard to say. Sword Xian seemed lost in thought. Immediately, his gaze turned to Ling Tian on the Xingzhong Square and he said, Ling Tian, let go of Qin Chuan first. Nowadays, Ling Tian is still stepping on the Qin Chuan River. This scene is indeed a bit unattractive. Master. You also saw that Qin Chuan was going to kill me just now. If you were the person standing here today, would you let those who wanted to kill you go? Ling Tian did not follow Jian Xian's orders, but he was not too arrogant either. In his memory, the head of the sword god sect, Jian Xian, was still a person who understood righteousness and had a deep affection for the sect. I know the grudge between you and Qin Chuan, but if you don't let him go now, what are you planning to do? Kill him. Jian Xian said calmly with a calm expression. He clearly heard the conversation between Qin Chuan and Ling Tian just now. He had already heard of these grievances before. It's just that Qin he has some power in the Sword God Sect. Behind him stood a father who was a senior elder of the Sword God Sect. Sometimes, even as the leader of the sect, Jian Xian had to give Qin he a third share. Ling Tian's gaze narrowed slightly upon hearing the sound, but he did not respond to Jian Xian. Afterwards, Jian Xian continued, you should know that in the Sword God Sect, killing disciples of the same sect is a serious crime. Besides, you are still killing Qin Chuan, the candidate for the Sword Sect. Now, if you let go of Qin Chuan, I can give you a chance to become a Sword Sect member. Chapter 6. After a month, the sword will be fixed again. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Just now, Ling Tian did have the idea of publicly executing Qin Chuan. Qin River father and son, shatter his dantian, depose his cultivation, and take away his sword bones. This hatred is irreconcilable. However, upon careful consideration, even if he can kill Qin River now, how can he kill Qin River? As for the position of Jianzi, he is not very interested. What he is truly interested in is Sword God Ling. It is said that the Sword God Order contains the inheritance of swords from various dynasties of the Sword God Sect. Among them, it also includes the founder of the Sword God Sect, the Chaos Sword Saint. The Chaos Sword Saint is the only person who has reached the perfect state through the cultivation of the Chaos Scripture. For him, its inheritance has wonderful benefits. Master. On the edge of Jianxian, Qin He's face suddenly changed when he heard Jianchuan's words, and he shouted anxiously at him. How could Jianxian give Ling Tian a chance to become a swordsman? What about his son Qin Chuan? Elder Qin. Before Qin he could say anything more, he saw Jianxian suddenly raise his hand and interrupt the opponent. I'm not only giving Ling Tian a chance, but also giving Qin Chuan a chance. Upon hearing the sound, Qin He's eyes flickered and his heart pondered. Immediately, there was no more to say. But he still felt a bit uneasy in his heart. After Jianxian's gaze turned to Ling Tian again, I'm not someone who doesn't understand why. I know you have a grudge in your heart. As long as you let go of Qin Chuan, after 3 months, I will give you two a fair chance to fight. The winner can lead the position of Sword Son of the Sword God Sect. Becoming a Sword Son enjoys privileges in the Sword God Sect. Any disobedience you have done before can be written off. Of course, Qin Chuan is the same. Ling Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he understood the meaning of Jianxian. It is obvious that Jianxian is giving both sides a step down. If he cannot become a swordsman, he will always speak lightly in the Sword God Sect. If Qin he wants to deal with him, there are plenty of means. He wanted to survive, but he had to leave the Sword God Sect. But once he leaves the Sword God Sect, the difficulty of cultivating the Chaos Manual will definitely increase significantly. Because he will not be able to obtain sufficient resource supply. After some contemplation, Ling Tian lifted his foot and stepped on the back of Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan got a chance to catch his breath and immediately got up from the ground. He took a few steps back, but his resentful gaze remained fixed on Ling Tian. But now, he dare not take action against Ling Tian anymore. Ling Tian's actions made Jianxian smile with satisfaction. Immediately, the figure of Jianxian trembled and slowly landed on the Holy Bell Square, stepping on the void. Qin Chuan, are you willing to fight against Ling Tian after March? Jianxian asked Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan's expression was gloomy, and his heart was filled with murderous intent. He gritted his teeth and whispered, if we want to fight, I hope it's a life and death battle. Oh. Jianxian raised his eyebrows lightly. Exactly what I want. Ling Tian said coldly at this moment. After speaking, his tone changed and he said, however, I hope the sect leader will schedule this battle after a month. After a month. Jian Xian was stunned for a moment, and his expression suddenly became surprised. The Lingtian Dantian is shattered, and if you want to continue practicing, you can only practice the Chaos Manual. The difficulty of cultivating the Chaos Manual is extremely high. He gave Ling Tian 3 months and already felt very nervous. It is believed that after March, it will be difficult for Ling Tian to make a comeback. But Ling Tian actually demanded that the life and death battle related to the position of sword be scheduled after 1 month. If even killing a mediocre talent like Qin Chuan requires 3 more months of cultivation, how am I worthy of becoming the sword god Sect swordsman? Ling Tian said a faint word. Between his expressions, he exuded his confidence. Master, Ling Tian has insulted me too much. Please allow me to have a life or death battle with Ling Tian in 1 month. Upon hearing Ling Tian's words, Qin Chuan became furious again. 3 months, it's too long. He wished he could kill Ling Tian now. Now, Ling Tian has proposed to advance the time by 2 months, which is right in his mind. Okay, since both of you have chosen to schedule this life and death battle after a month, then I will fulfill you. Jian Xian's eyebrows furrowed slightly, but after hesitating for a while, he still agreed. After finishing his words, his gaze swept around the St. Bell Square and he announced to the people calmly, within a month, the Sword God Sect will go up to the sect elders and down to ordinary disciples. If anyone dares to touch Ling Tian and Qin Chuan at all, I will punish them severely according to the sect's rules. As for today's Sword Sun coronation ceremony, let's call it a day and let's all disperse. Now, Qin Chuan and Ling Tian are the only 2 candidates for the position of Jianzi in the Sword God Sect. Since the Battle of Swords has been scheduled after January, Jian Xian naturally does not want any difference between the 2 within this month. His command also cut off many people's bad intentions. Yes. Master. Everyone responded to the order in unison. Today, at the ceremony of the Sword God Sect Sword Sun's coronation, Ling Tian summoned the Chaos Bell to ring 12 times. Leveraging the power of the Chaos Bell, he used his cultivation in the body refining realm to defeat Qin Chuan, who had the cultivation in the spirit will realm, with a strong force. This matter is bound to leave a significant mark in the history of the Sword God Sect. However, in the eyes of everyone, Ling Tian is ultimately just a flash in the pan. They feel that the proposal of the January agreement by the Patriarch is completely a favor to Qin Chuan and a trap for Ling Tianxia. The Lingtian Dantian has been shattered, not to mention in a month, even in a year, there can be no progress in cultivation. How could it be Qin Chuan's opponent? Moreover, after a month, Qin Chuan may already have stronger strength. Ling Tian, come with me. I'll take you to meet someone. The people around the square left one after another, while Jian Xian spoke faintly to Ling Tian at this moment. As the words fell, a spiritual force emanated from within Sword Xian's body, enveloping Ling Tian. Afterwards, he took Ling Tian into the air and flew towards the sky. That's in the direction of the Wangjian Mountains. It seems that the sect leader indeed intends to have the old madman teach Ling Tian to practice the Chaos Manual. Even with the guidance of an old madman, what can we do? You all know the difficulty of cultivating the Chaos Scripture. With only 1 month of cultivation, Ling Tian cannot have the strength to resist Qin Chuan. A group of elders of the Sword God Sect judged Jian Xian's intention from the direction of his departure with Ling Tian. Some senior elders of the Sword God Sect know about it. There is an old madman living in the Wangjian Mountains. This person is the 49th generation sword son of the Sword God Sect, and also the last person to sound the Chaos Bell 8 times. After becoming a swordsman, the first thing this person did was to self-depose the Dantian. The purpose is only to cultivate the Chaos Manual. Due to this crazy move, he was called a madman by the elders of the Sword God Sect. Ling Tian followed Jian Xian closely and flew into the void above the Wangjian mountain range. At this point, he had also guessed Jian Xian's intention. Is the leader planning to bring his disciples to pay respects to Senior Kanjia? In his past life, it was Kanjia who saved his life in the Wangjian mountain range and taught him the chaos scripture, giving him a chance to turn over. Do you know about Kanjia? Upon hearing the sound, Jian Xian's expression showed a hint of curiosity. Subsequently, he quickly regained his composure. In the Sword God Sect, not many people know about Kanjia. Jian Xian speculated that Ling Tian should have obtained some information about Kanjia from the mouth of the Qin River. Ling Tian, now your elixir field is shattered. If you want to continue practicing, you have to choose to cultivate the Chaos Manual. And the Elder Kanjia is currently the only person in our Sword God Sect who cultivates the Chaos Manual. If you can be accepted as a disciple by him, you may still defeat Qin Chuan in a month. Otherwise, no one can help you. Jian Xian spoke to Ling Tian with a long focus. Chapter 7. Those who have not yet entered heaven can be beheaded. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Previously, he proposed a life and death battle between Qin Chuan and Ling Tian 1 month later to compete for the position of Sword Son, rather than leaning against Qin Chuan. On the contrary, he saw Ling Tian's potential. I have high hopes for Ling Tian's cultivation of the chaos scripture. The sect leader is well-intentioned, and the disciples will remember it in their hearts. However, I guess Senior Kanjia would be happy to accept me as an apprentice. Ling Tian smiled strangely, with a confident expression on his face. Jian Xian felt that Ling Tian's words were too frivolous. No one has ever dared to say who Kanjia will definitely accept as its disciple. He took Ling Tian to search for the Tsang Cliff, but only with a try-and-see attitude. Whether it can be achieved or not is still an unknown number. Senior Kanjia has a strange temperament. Don't be too arrogant when you see him later. Jian Xian glanced at Ling Tian and warned him. I understand. Ling Tian nodded slightly. No one knows Kanjia better than him. In his past life, he followed Kanjia for 8 years and was familiar with his temperament. Unfortunately, before he could repay Kanjia well, Kanjia died due to the limit of his lifespan. This is also one of the regrets left by his past life. In the ancient continent, people have no immortality. A warrior's cultivation has not yet reached the realm of heaven and humanity, and their lifespan is no different from that of ordinary people, with only 100 years of lifespan. If one can step into heaven and humanity, they can extend their life by 100 years. At this time, there were already 90 to 20 cliffs. Due to the cultivation of the Chaos Manual, his cultivation has been delayed in reaching the realm of heaven and humanity, and he has been able to prolong his life. But in the Sword God Sect, even powerful beings like Sword Xian dare not disrespect Kanjia. This is not only because of Kanjia's seniority, but also because of his domineering strength. He is the only strong person in the Sword God Sect who can slay celestial beings before entering them. Not long after, Jian Xian bent down with Ling Tian. The two figures simultaneously fell by a lake in the Wangjian Mountains. There is a thatched cottage built by the lake. The thatched cottage is surrounded by lush vegetation for 100 meters, but there is no trace of the scent of monsters. This is the hinterland of the Wangjian Mountains. The demon beasts were supposed to roam freely. However, not a single monster dared to approach here. As a result, Kanjia was able to live in seclusion here with ease. Jian Xian led Ling Tian a few steps to the door of the thatched cottage, and then bowed respectfully towards the door. Senior Kanjia, Sword Xian is here to visit. Creak. The door was opened from inside. Immediately, a disheveled cliff with white hair slowly walked out of the room. Seeing the Tsang Cliff, Ling Tian's expression was somewhat excited. 300 years. After 300 years, he saw his mentor again. Master, in this life, I will definitely find a way to help you achieve the realm of heaven and humanity, and extend your life for 100 years. Ling Tian thought to himself. Kanjia glanced at Ling Tian and then said nonchalantly to Jian Xian, "So there's still someone who remembers me. Jian Xian, are you here to see if this terrible old man has died?" Senior Kanjia misunderstood. "This time, I have brought a disciple with good intelligence to the senior." Jian Xian knew that Kanjia had a strange temperament, so when he heard the other person say this, he just smiled awkwardly. "Are you talking about this kid?" Kanjia glanced at Ling Tian again. "Exactly." Jian Xian nodded and said, "I know Senior Kanjia has taken in 2 disciples before, but neither of them has practiced the chaos scripture. They will have difficulty inheriting your legacy. However, Ling Tian is different. He just sounded the chaos bell 12 times at the Holy Bell Square and fully understood the chaos bell. He is definitely an excellent candidate for practicing the chaos manual. In the next 100 years, our sword god sect may not have such disciples again, let alone." Sword Xian's words were halfway through and he didn't continue. He was originally planning to say that the end of the cliff is approaching and he can't wait long. But if you say this, it would be too offensive. Being able to sound the chaos bell 12 times is indeed a genius in practicing the chaos manual. However, my Kanjia can recruit useless people as disciples, but it will not recruit dead people as disciples. With an indifferent word, Kanjia turned around and planned to return to the house. Jian Xian immediately became anxious upon seeing the situation and said, "Senior Kanjia, what do you mean by this? Isn't Ling Tian living well? Do you really think I'm hiding here and don't know anything?" Upon hearing the sound, Kanjia turned his head and scolded. "In today's world, no one is more aware of the difficulty of cultivating the chaos scripture than I am. You want this son to have a life and death battle with the son of Qin River in a month, right? In a month's time, do you think he can cultivate the chaos manual to what extent? This is not asking him to die, so what is it? Although I don't care about the name behind me, Kanjia doesn't want to make a joke. My disciple was mocked and killed just a month after he was accepted." The series of angry questioning by Kanjia gradually solidified Jian Xian's expression and made him feel extremely embarrassed for a moment. Ling Tian on one side saw this, but secretly laughed in his heart. It is obvious that Jian Xian still does not have enough understanding of Kanjia. Otherwise, he wouldn't be embarrassed. But Ling Tian knew that Kanjia was not really angry now. Intentionally blaming Jian Xian was just an opportunity to negotiate terms with him. Senior Kanjia, Ling Tian has an amazing understanding. Being able to trigger the chaos bell to ring 12 times is already a great miracle. If you guide him to practice the chaos manual, it is impossible to guarantee that there will be no more miracles after a month. Jian Xian's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and after a moment of hesitation, he explained to Kanjia. "If it's a miracle, it won't happen easily." However, Kanjia retorted Jian Xian's words with just one sentence, Sword Xian remained speechless once again. The atmosphere was extremely awkward for a moment. After a moment of silence, Kanjia deliberately showed a puzzled expression and said, "If you insist on me accepting him as his disciple, it's not impossible. What are the requirements of Senior Kanjia?" Jian Xian's body trembled and he suddenly looked up, feeling a bit clear. Then, he burst into a helpless and bitter smile. He brought Ling Tian to Kanjia here, but he actually had his own ideas. Firstly, he certainly hopes that Ling Tian can cultivate the chaos scripture to a state of great perfection and forge a powerful chaos body. Even if the final result is unsatisfactory and cannot be completed, at least the Kanjia lineage can still be preserved. If, decades after the fall of Kanjia due to the Great Limit, there is a genius in the Sword God sect who is extremely suitable for practicing the Chaos Manual, can Ling Tian still teach him? Sun Cliff just grasped Jian Xian's mentality and dared to use those words to stimulate Jian Xian. As Jian Xian asked, Kanjia flipped his hand and threw a waxy yellow paper towards the opponent. "Prepare all these medicinal herbs in the quantity I requested. Kanjia's faint path." Jian Xian opened it and immediately showed a helpless expression on his face. The requirements on the yellow paper are all medicinal herbs used to strengthen the foundation of the warrior. Obviously, they are all used for Ling Tian. This indicates that Kanjia had the intention of accepting Ling Tian as his disciple early on. Senior Kanjia, there are several rare medicinal herbs on this. I'm afraid it will take some time to prepare. Since he had reached the path of the cliff, Jian Xian could only reluctantly accept it. I'll give you half a month. A faint word from Kanjia. As he finished speaking, he waved his hand towards Jian Xian and said, "You can leave now and leave this kid behind." Okay, I will ask the pharmacy staff to hurry up and purchase these medicinal herbs. Jian Xian nodded slightly and then looked at Ling Tian. Dao, Ling Tian, you should follow Senior Kanjia to practice and not slack off. After speaking, he turned around and walked out of the yard. After driving himself into the air, he left here. Chapter 8. Abyss of Heaven and Earth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Come on in. After Jian Xian left, Kanjia turned around and walked into the thatched cottage. Ling Tian naturally followed in. As he followed into the room, a strong medicinal fragrance spread across the surface. In the center of the thatched cottage, there stands a cauldron. The medicine inside is constantly boiling. Ling Tian has a lifelong memory and also has some understanding of pharmacology, so he immediately made a judgment. Originally, Master had prepared a medicinal liquid for me early on to wash the scriptures, cut off the marrow, and build a strong foundation. Ling Tian smiled foolishly and said. Judging from its appearance, it seems to be very familiar with Kanjia and not polite at all. Can you actually tell what kind of medicine these are? Kanjia stared at Ling Tian, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. However, as he followed, he rudely said to Ling Tian, Dao, I have prepared the medicine for you. But don't rush to call me master, I didn't say I wanted to take you as an apprentice. Your elder is also too far-sighted. Shouldn't you be worried that I will die at the hands of Qinchuan in a month, insulting your lifelong reputation? Ling Tian reluctantly spread out his hand and smiled. He is very familiar with the personality of Kanjia and is by no means a rigid person. In the previous life, Kanjia picked him up from the Wangjian mountain range, but directly accepted him as a closed-door disciple. There aren't so many moths. But at that time, he was asked to change his name. It is for the convenience of him walking in the Sword God Sect to avoid being persecuted by Qin He and his son. But obviously, there is no need for this in this lifetime. You're quite clever, too. Kanjia glanced at Ling Tian and then sighed sarcastically, just such a smart person, how could he be so foolish that he was calculated for 2 years without being noticed? A good sword bone, someone dug it up. Master's mouth is still as poisonous as ever. Ling Tian looked embarrassed. Although Kanjia temporarily does not recognize him as his disciple, he still refers to Kanjia as his master. Don't worry, after a month, I will definitely not disrespect my master's reputation and will definitely behead Qin Chuan by the sword, he said. Everyone can talk big, who knows if you are really suitable for practicing the Chaos Manual. Kanjia looks indifferent. But in fact, he doesn't really care. Nowadays, he is 90.2 years old. Knowing that there is no hope of breaking through heaven and humanity, there is only less than 8 years left in life. In this final moment, he certainly hopes that someone can inherit his legacy. And Ling Tian is the perfect candidate. Here, I will first pass on the chaos scripture to you. But you must remember and not easily pass it on to others. Kanjia's expression suddenly became serious. Chaos scripture is one of the most precious techniques of the Sword God Sect. Although this cultivation method requires strict requirements, the difficulty of cultivation is not as high as usual. However, it is still not possible to spread it casually. This is also the rule of the Sword God Sect. I swear I won't easily pass it on to others. Ling Tian nodded slightly and solemnly promised. The memory of the chaos scripture still lingers in his mind. However, due to the reversal of reincarnation, his memory of many martial arts techniques, including chaos scripture, has become very blurred. There should be no deviation in the cultivation of martial arts and martial arts. Once the memory is incomplete, the difficulty of cultivation will increase exponentially. Even, there is a possibility of going crazy. So, he must now once again accept the memory of the chaos scripture. Okay, keep your heart and mind, and truly understand. Kanjia smiled slightly and nodded in satisfaction. Follow and immediately release a divine thought. As this divine thought invaded the sea of consciousness, Ling Tian slowly closed his eyes. The content of the chaos scripture is constantly infused into his sea of consciousness. This also made him realize that in the sea, the vague memory of the chaotic scriptures became increasingly clear. Did you remember everything? After a moment, Kanjia withdrew his mind and asked a faint question. Remember. Ling Tian opened his eyes and nodded slightly. Since I remember, what are you still doing in a daze? Why don't you hurry and roll into the cauldron? This batch of medicine is carefully prepared by me. While absorbing the power of the medicine, you must remember to operate the chaos manual I passed to you, and strive to use this batch of medicine to cultivate the first layer of chaos manual in one fell swoop. After receiving Ling Tian's reply, Kanjia angrily urged him one after another. The chaos scripture has a total of 100 layers. Every 9 levels constitute a realm. The 1st to 9th levels correspond to the refining realm, the 10th to 18th levels correspond to the spiritual realm, and the 19th to 27th levels correspond to the spiritual will realm. From now on, and so on. Nowadays, Kanjia has cultivated the chaos manual to 45 levels. In terms of realm alone, he can be called a 9th level warrior in the true Yuan realm. However, its combat power has long been invincible in the true Yuan realm. Even enough to fight against most of the powerful beings in the heavenly and human realm. In his previous life, Ling Tian practiced the chaos manual for a full 8 years. It was only cultivated to the 36th level. Later, by chance, he found a way to repair the Dantian. Also, because the chaos scripture is too difficult to cultivate. After repairing the Dantian, he changed to other martial arts and eventually became a saint. Although in the end, he was unable to cultivate the chaos scripture to 100 levels. He still benefits a lot from the chaos scripture, giving him the strength to surpass his current state. Okay, I'll go right away. Ling Tian smiled shamelessly. Following the big step forward, I stripped off my clothes 3 times, 5 times, and 2 times. Afterwards, he jumped directly into the cauldron. At the moment when his skin came into contact with the medicine, the terrifying power of the medicine immediately seeped into his body. Ling Tian felt a burst of heat all over his body. But he couldn't control so much at the moment, he just started operating the chaos scripture. At this moment, the Heavenly Way Stele, which was integrated into its divine soul, emerged again in the sea of consciousness. And once again released a force of heavenly path evolution. Under this force, the chaos scripture began to evolve into the chaos avenue. The power of the evolution of the heavenly way, this feeling is amazing. Ling Tian constantly comprehended the path of chaos and practiced the chaos manual, feeling an unprecedented sense of relaxation. In his past life, he had an astonishing understanding. I still feel extremely exhausted while practicing the chaos manual. But at this moment, with the help of the Heavenly Way Stele, he had a feeling of copying exam papers based on answers when practicing the chaos manual. Extremely easy. Of course, the cultivation of the chaos scripture is far from enough to rely solely on one's own understanding. It also needs to be reinforced with the physical body. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for light to realize the path of chaos without a matching physique to unleash. In the furnace cauldron, the medicinal liquid provided by Kanjia is a shortcut to help him strengthen his physique. After several hours of soaking, his meridians and bones had been thoroughly washed. At this moment, golden lights flickered on Ling Tian's body, rhythmically moving like breathing. This is... The cliff, which had been guarding on the side, couldn't help but show a strong expression of surprise upon seeing this. After a few breaths, this golden light rose into the sky. Unexpectedly, the roof of this thatched cottage was lifted off the ground, roaming and rumbling. A thunderous sound pierced through the sky, tearing apart the sky above the Sword Mountain range. The dazzling flames kept emerging, spreading freely and staining the void for hundreds of miles. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is like water breaking through a dike, accompanied by fiery rays, constantly converging in the void above Ling Tian's head. In the end, all spiritual powers were simultaneously poured down, enveloping Ling Tian's entire body. Thunder shatters the sky. Blazing flames shine for 9 days. Spiritual power gathers tides. Why did such a celestial anomaly suddenly appear? Kanjia exclaimed in surprise, and the whole person suddenly froze. Chapter 9, 18th Floor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When he looked at Ling Tian again, he saw a gray and chaotic aura constantly lingering around him. As the chaotic energy grew stronger and stronger, it eventually gave rise to the power of chaos. Is it difficult for this kid to cultivate the chaos manual to the 10th level in less than 4 hours? Kanjia stared in disbelief, his old face filled with indescribable brilliance. Ordinary martial artists cultivate, sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, forge elixirs, and condense spiritual energy into spiritual power. But the essence of cultivating the chaos scripture is to return the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to its original source, transforming it into the chaotic energy. Then transform the chaotic energy into the power of chaos. Nowadays, Ling Tian's body has nurtured the power of chaos, which undoubtedly means that he has cultivated the chaos manual to the 10th level. 4 hours. Back then, I was also considered exceptionally talented, but it took me a whole day to cultivate into the first layer of the chaos manual. As for the 10th layer of the chaos manual, it took several months to barely complete. Kanjia couldn't help but sigh. The chaos manual becomes more difficult to cultivate as one progresses further. But at the beginning of cultivation, the speed of improvement was relatively fast. The cultivation speed of Ling Tian. It's a bit too fast. Jian Xian didn't deceive me. This kid is indeed a genius who cultivates the chaos manual. Okay. That's great. That's great. I, Kanjia, swear here. For the rest of my life, I will only do one thing, at all costs, and give my all to cultivate this son. Kanjia's scorching gaze fixed on Ling Tian, who was sitting inside the still furnace cauldron with his eyes tightly closed, and his emotions were extremely excited. At the same time, the movement of the void above the Wangjian mountain range also attracted the attention of many powerful members of the Sword God Sect. The disciples of the Sword God Sect are unclear. But some elders of the Sword God Sect showed signs of surprise. Heaven and earth illusion. It seems like it's from the old lunatic. What is this old lunatic doing? Just now, the sect leader took Ling Tian to the old madman's place. I guess the old madman must be borrowing heavenly materials and treasures to forge the strongest foundation for Ling Tian. Moreover, he is likely passing on merits to Ling Tian, otherwise it would not have caused such a heaven and earth anomaly. The old madman is indeed an old madman. Ling Tian, who is still uncertain whether he can survive for a month, is willing to waste so many natural resources and treasures. If he passes on his merits to Ling Tian again, he may never be able to step into heaven and earth again in his life. Several elders of the Sword God Sect were discussing freely with each other. It's not surprising to think that Kanjia, an old madman, has done such a crazy act. However, their guesses are not entirely correct. Kanjia is indeed using natural materials and treasures to forge the strongest foundation for Ling Tian. But he did not pass on the credit to Ling Tian. Ling Tian triggered celestial anomalies entirely due to his powerful intellect. Above the Qin peak of Sword God Sect, Qin He and his son naturally noticed the movement of the watching Sword Mountain Range. "Dad, it's on the other side of the Wangjian Mountain Range. Shouldn't it be the old guy from the Wangjian Mountain Range who is passing on the merit to Ling Tian?" Qin Chuan guessed and felt a strong sense of unease in his chest. He and Ling Tianjiang will have a life and death battle after a month, vying for the position of Sword Son. I naturally don't want to see Ling Tian become stronger. How could such a commotion in the Wangjian Mountains make him feel at ease now? Transmit merit. Qin He gazed into the distance and furrowed his brow slightly. With the personality of an old lunatic, it is possible to do such crazy things, he said. However, the old madman is practicing the chaos scripture, even if he passes on all his chaos power to Ling Tian. Ling Tian would have to spend at least 10 or 8 years absorbing it all. After a moment, he shook his head again and said, "Chuaner, you don't need to pay too much attention to this matter. After 1 month of cultivation, Ling Tian couldn't possibly have stronger strength than you. What you need to do now is seize the time to completely integrate the sword bones and cast the Sword King body." 3 days ago, Qin Chuan dug out the bones of the Ling Tian sword and fused them into himself. But the fusion of sword bones is not so simple. He has not fully fused his sword bones yet. If the sword bones are completely fused, he can cast a royal-level physique sword body. At that time, let alone in the Sword God Sect. Even if you look at the entire Flame Cloud country, it can definitely be called a first. Class pride. 1 month is enough time for me to completely fuse my sword bones. Qin Chuan calmed down and his gaze suddenly became extremely cold. Wangjian Mountain Range, by Qingshui Lake, in a thatched cottage. After more than an hour of soaking, Ling Tian had completely absorbed the power of the medicine in the cauldron. Then, he opened his previously closed eyes. When he looked in front of him, he found Kanjia excitedly staring at him. That gaze was like staring at one's lover. "Master, why are you looking at me so strangely?" Ling Tian shivered all over. "He's wearing nothing now, he truly deserves to be my disciple on Kanjia. In just a few hours, he has actually cultivated the Chaos Manual to the 10th level." Kanjia suddenly burst out laughing and sighed sincerely. Ling Tian's face was speechless, and his expression couldn't help but become strange. "Didn't you ask me not to rush to call you master before? Why is it now? What's wrong? You don't want to recognize me as your master anymore. 1 day as a teacher, 1 lifetime as a father. If you dare to bully your master and destroy your ancestors, I'll see if I don't kill you." Kanjia immediately interrupted Ling Tian's words, looking furious. No, disciple doesn't mean that." Ling Tian quickly waved his hand. "The speed of flipping faces is even faster than flipping books. Hurry up and get out, I need to prepare the next batch of medicine for you. According to your current cultivation progress, in 1 month, you can at least cultivate the Chaos Manual to the 18th level, and even have a chance to impact the 19th level." Immediately, Kanjia impatiently waved at Ling Tian. Ling Tian was also helpless and could only immediately jump out of the cauldron. In the following days, Kanjia will prepare a new batch of medicine for Ling Tian every day. Ling Tian has been staying in this thatched cottage on the cliff, practicing the Chaos Manual day and night. With the power of the evolution of the Heavenly Way Stele and the assistance of the Furnace of Medicine on Kanjia, he successfully cultivated the Chaos Manual to the 18th level in 15 days. Now, equivalent to having a 9th level cultivation in the spiritual realm. However, in these 15 days, he also consumed decades of savings from Kanjia. But Kanjia did not feel any heartache for it. Even very willing. "I didn't expect your cultivation progress to be faster than I imagined, but unfortunately, as a teacher, I haven't accumulated many natural materials and treasures over the years. In the short term, I'm afraid it won't be enough to help you cultivate the 19th layer of the Chaos Manual. Kanjia couldn't help but sigh again as he watched Ling Tian absorb the power of the last batch of medicine. Master, didn't you ask the sect leader to prepare some medicinal herbs before? If you go and get them, you might be able to support a few more days of cultivation. Ling Tian walked out of the furnace cauldron, wearing clothes while speaking to Kanjia. I'll go. Kanjia glared at Ling Tian and sternly scolded him, do you understand etiquette? There's nothing like this that I, as a master, have to go and get it myself. Chapter 10. Sword God Sect Pharmacy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Master, do you mean to let me go to the Sword God Sect Pharmacy to collect medicine myself? After putting on his clothes, Ling Tian looked awkwardly at Kanjia and asked. Nonsense. Kanjia said without hesitation. Upon hearing this, Ling Tian couldn't help but show a puzzled expression on his face. Master, it's not a problem for you to ask your disciples to do such errands. But you forgot that this is the hinterland of the Wangjian mountain range. On the way to Sword God's Sect from here, I'm not sure how many monsters I'll encounter. With my disciples' current strength, ordinary level monsters can barely handle it, but I can't bear those yellow level and Xian level monsters. There are many monsters in the Wangjian mountain range. And the closer the area is to the center, the stronger the monster's strength. Ordinary demon beasts are equivalent to human spiritual realm warriors, and their strength is not particularly strong. But the yellow and Xian level demon beasts have the strength of the human spirit will realm and spirit sea realm. As for the earth-level demon beasts that are comparable to human true elemental realm warriors, there are only 2 or 3 in the Wangjian mountain range, so there is no need to worry about encountering them. Look at your impressive performance. Kanjia cast a disdainful glance at Ling Tian, with a disdainful expression on his face. Immediately, he flipped his palm and handed a wooden sword to Ling Tian, take it. Wooden sword. Ling Tian took this wooden sword from Kanjia's hand with a bewildered expression on his face. At first glance, this sword doesn't seem particularly special. And it's still made of wood. Is it a bit too shabby to use for self-defense? This is the divine wooden sword. Seeing Ling Tian's ignorant appearance, Kanjia casually explained. Isn't Shenmu's sword still a wooden sword? What's special about this sword? Ling Tian looked curious. With this sword in hand, you can walk horizontally in the Wangjian mountain range. Unless you actively provoke those ground-level monsters, the monsters in the Wangjian mountain range dare not step within your 100-step range. Kanjia said calmly. Is this sword really so powerful? Ling Tian looked incredulous. Generally speaking, divine weapons and sharp weapons are made of various rare metals and carefully crafted by powerful alchemists. But the material of this wooden sword is actually wood. And, this wood is still the most ordinary type of wood. It's not a strange wood. Nonsense, can I still deceive you? Kanjia coldly rebuked and then slowly explained, back then, when I first came to this place for seclusion, there was a ground-level demon beast, the Heavenly Tiger, who came to provoke me and was executed by me with this sword. Afterwards, I used the blood of the Heavenly Tiger to refine this divine wooden sword. Since then, the aura of the Heavenly Tiger has been left on the divine wooden sword. Once the demon beasts in the Wangjian mountain range feel the aura of the Heavenly Tiger, they cannot escape in time, and how will they approach you within 100 steps? So it's like this. Ling Tian understood and came over. The stronger the monster, the stronger its territorial consciousness. These monsters will warn the surrounding weak monsters not to step into their territory by releasing their own breath. The divine wood sword possesses the aura of the earth-level monster devouring the Heavenly Tiger, which is equivalent to possessing a mobile territory of the devouring Heavenly Tiger. So, unless it's those powerful beings who are also earth-level monsters, they dare not approach the divine wood sword at all. Master, then I'll go to the Sword God Sect first. After receiving the divine wood sword, Ling Tian turned around excitedly. At this moment, the voice of Kanjia came from behind him once again. This time, you can go to the Sword God Sect Medicine Hall to collect medicine. You can also go to the Sutra Pavilion on the way and choose 2 martial arts that are suitable for you to practice. Got it, Master. Ling Tian didn't turn around and waved with his back to the cliff, then immediately walked out of the thatched cottage. In his past life, he was a Lingtian sword saint and had gained many amazing and powerful martial arts skills. Unfortunately, most of these martial arts skills have not been practiced by him. Therefore, after reversing the cycle of reincarnation, he was unable to leave any memories. As for the martial arts skills he had previously practiced, they were not suitable for cultivation due to the relationship between reverse reincarnation and incomplete memory. So, he still has to start over. However, with the Heavenly Way monument at hand, it is easy to cultivate martial arts skills. He is not worried. After leaving this thatched cottage, he immediately took out his divine wood sword and rushed into the Wangjian mountain range, heading straight to the Sword God Sect. Everything is as the cliff says. Along the way, not to mention being a monster, not even a mosquito has been encountered. After he arrived at the Sword God Sect, he finally put away the divine wood sword. He is already familiar with the path of Sword God Sect. In just a few steps, he arrived at the medicine hall of the Sword God Sect. The Sword God Sect Pharmacy is also a place where Sword God Sect resources are distributed. These days happen to be the day when disciples of the Sword God Sect receive resources. At this moment, a long queue had already formed at the entrance of the pharmacy. Senior Brother Chao Yang, is there a slight decrease in the gathering spirit pill this month? At the front of the queue, a girl in a white dress stood in front of a long table at the entrance of the pharmacy, holding a porcelain bottle in her hand, inquiring, her face very unpleasant. Ling Yu. Ling Tian heard the sound and looked at the woman, immediately recognizing her. Ling Yu, like him, is from the Ling family in Beifeng town. He is the adopted son of the head of the family, Ling Hai, and Ling Yu is Ling Hai's youngest daughter. The two can be considered as sworn brothers and sisters. In his past life, the Ling family suffered a tragic downfall. Only he and Ling Yu survived and should have relied on each other. Unfortunately, his Dantian was abandoned and he was persecuted by Qin He and his son. I can only curl up in the Watching Sword Mountain range and follow the practice of Kanjia, with no time to care about Ling Yu. Ling Yu was almost bullied and forcibly taken over by the son of an elder of the Sword God Sect later on, and he struggled to resist without success. He committed suicide to protect his chastity. A few years later, although he avenged Ling Yu, he ultimately left behind regret and regret for life. Is that right? Are you saying I'm taking your pill? At this moment, a piercing sound came from the front, interrupting Ling Tian's thoughts. Ling Tian glanced sideways and saw a young man in a blue shirt arrogantly lying in front of the pharmacy door, his feet crossed and hanging on the table, staring at Ling Yu with a slanted gaze. I didn't expect that the person who distributed the gathering pill to our disciples of the outer sect this month was Chao Yang. Chao Yang has blatantly seized the elixirs of disciples from other sects not once or twice, and encountering him distributing the gathering spirit pill can only be considered unlucky for us. This guy must have used some connections to get the job of distributing the gathering pill and make a fortune out of it. What a bastard. If it weren't for his father who is an elder in the execution hall, I would have given him a good lesson. Shuo, keep your voice down. Don't let this guy hear you, otherwise the criminal court will charge you casually and it won't be worth it if you're caught. At the back of the team, several disciples of the outer sect saw Chao Yang's expression and began to discuss one by one, but they dared not speak too loudly. Chao Yang is a disciple of the medicine hall and also a disciple of the Sword God Sect. I usually act recklessly and bully disciples of other sections. In terms of strength, he is simply not ranked among the outer sects of the Sword God Sect. But he has a good fortune and a father who is an elder in the execution hall. So even if some disciples from other sects who are stronger than him suffer losses in his hands, they dare not speak out in anger. Ling Tian stared at Chao Yang in front of him, his eyes flickering with a murderous intent. If I remember correctly, in his past life, it was this Chao Yang who intended to bully and forcibly occupy Ling Yu, forcing her to commit suicide.